to order. So we have Sarah on screen, Dina Hodges for Pratt, Lee Creighton here. And you. So, all right, just kick. All right, so we'll start off with the library operating budget. So in your books, it's on page 163. So the operating budget is pretty much a status quo budget. No anticipated changes in staffing or operations. Bottom line, so the 3% increase. Some tweaking here and there, but pretty much a status quo.
Where's the 3%?
Just at the bottom line shows a 3.
And the building repair included in the regular budget is just all independent of what we're going to be largely talking about in terms of walkways and other grant proposals and everything. That's just
it's
just minor stuff, right? Okay, I just want to be sure they were.
That's separate from the new capital.
Are we going to get some sheep in to do the lawn this time? I mean, reducing the lawn and landscaping a bit.
Not going to facilities.
Well, the lawn looks has been looked pretty good this past year, I think, and the landscaping looks great. Better than it's ever looked. But DPW's been
there we go. There we go. DPW, this is another area DPW's got.
It's not the facilities. Yep, that's fine. So this is just mine. But I'm just like office supplies. Why is that up 25%, $1,000?
The request is based on last year's spending in addition to just inflationary costs of everything is costing more for drink.
Could you speak up just a second?
I'm sorry. Yes. So that's why that was the increase there. I was basing that off of fiscal 23 actual spending.
If you look at 22 and 23 actual.
Yeah, no, I understand. It's just, and I know 3% is close to 2.5, but anytime I see a number above 2.5, I think to myself, there's money coming from somewhere else, right? Because we started the day with 2.5 more at the consolidated level. You know what I mean? So 3 versus 2.5 is not a big deal, but it's over 2.5. So I think it's taken from somewhere else. Good point. I guess my fault, but is there a way to kind of walk the middle ground there?
You could try.
Or maybe books and magazines, maybe that, I don't know.
So that materials budget is developed based on a 19% of our annual budget that we're required to spend in order to remain certified by state law. So we actually are not at 19% with that budget increase. I know it seems high, but that is pretty much our highest expenditure all the time. It's going to be our books and materials. So that's all databases and e-materials and books and DVDs, everything we have for the public. And that increase isn't even quite the 19%. We do make up the 19% with some funds that are gifted to us specifically for book purchases.
Yeah, I'm just comparing it to the prior actuals, and a couple of years ago, I had the library, you know, where I did the deep dive, talked about the accreditation, and you know, my two takeaways was, one is it results in a state grant, but it's like $5,000, so that's a percentage of the total budget. And the other was the ability to share, you know, different stuff. But look, you know, I'm just saying, is there places to kind of shave a little? That's all I'm saying. So if it's not that line, maybe it's the office supplies.
So Mike, just to clarify, are you looking to shave from 3 to 2.5? Is that like at the bottom line, or are you looking at
Just trying to go a little bit in that direction, yes. I mean, not all the way, but
Greg, didn't we make some changes to custodial the last 2 years? Is that all? Is library still separate from town hall and places like that?
So, both of the library cleaning is done by the facility.
Okay, so is this 1,000 just their portion of it, or?
That's some special cleaning, like carpet cleaning perhaps, and help me out, Cynthia.
So the supplies themselves are things like paper and cleaning supplies and anything custodial that's used. The custodian salary piece is in the salaries portion, and we pay part of the salary in walking supplies. But the custodial supplies are just that, just cleaning supplies, etc. And again, you know, I could make those flat. Given the costs that we spent in FY23, I probably have a hard time making it through. But
Okay, yeah.
how about the computer operations?
so the operations themselves, the majority of that is we pay for computer access for the public through our consortium, Merrimack Valley Library Consortium, and that increase is directly related to what has already been approved as their FY25 budget. So I already know what our cost is going to be for those computer operations, and it is reflected in cost.
So the 26.8, like you already know exactly to the penny, that's what it's going to be.
That's what our share of it is going to be, yes.
Sorry, the share of what?
So every library pays a certain amount of money for membership into the consortium to provide those services. They provide our integrated library system, which is the computer, basically. They provide our access to public computers for the public. They also provide ebooks, but that's covered in the books and materials.
Does Essex belong to that consortium?
Do they belong to BLC? They do.
So they pay some kind of, again, pro rata, obviously they're smaller.
Yeah, they'll pay some portion as well.
So will Essex have the same increase, 3.1%?
They'll have the same increase, but it'll be proportional to what they pay because they do it library by library.
Proportional, dollar-wise, it would still be 3.1% increase, correct?
Yes.
So does that answer your question, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the answer is it is what it is. I'm just trying to tick it to the last year actual. That's
It is. It's a decent increase.
It's a 5% over the last actions we had.
So capital items, which we'll get to. But is there anything we ought to be talking about or thinking about within the operation that's not reflected here and would be useful to raise? Whether it's over and above what you're bringing up here.
I can think of one, but go ahead. Yeah.
From an operational basis.
Yes, I'm talking about operations,
Right.
not capital.
Right.
Just wondered if, looking at a slightly larger picture, You know, is there something we ought to be thinking about in a more multi-year basis that we're not?
Building repairs is, you know, it seems like every year we come to you all requesting emergency funding because we're way over our building repair budget. And part of it's, you know, we're dealing with a building that's 136 years old. But just as an example, this year the sewer line broke and we had to get a replacement. We had to shut down the library. We couldn't keep it open because the bathrooms couldn't be operational. That was much higher than our total annual expenditure for typically for building repairs. But every year it's something.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we did raise it by $1,000 this year, but even that's probably not going to cover what typically happens with this old building. There's always some calamity that's taking place. We've got one right now in the ceiling. There's
Unpredictable
right in the front.
calamity, I gather, is what you're saying. I mean, there's nothing predictable here that you ought to be talking about over and above what your repair budget is here, but.
Well, can you think of any?
Well, I think, you know, what we get into is what becomes the capital expense. And, you know, in our request this year, we're hoping to do just that, is to be more accurate in planning for those capital expenses so that they're not taking us by surprise. And they're not all coming out of, you know, what is clearly more of a building maintenance than building repair. We can take on that, but it is not a lot of money. It goes very quickly. One thing happens and that budget money.
Just encourage you to come forward with something that's.
Yeah, so this is, I'm not sure I'm going to phrase this correctly because I honestly don't know all the ins and outs of some of this in terms of an operational budget and what's the correct thing to do in terms of accounting, right? And how the town wants to do its accounting. But so we know that we need to spend 19% of our budget on books and materials to keep accreditation, which is vastly important, right? It keeps us connected to towns, it improves school scores, et cetera, et cetera. So that's fine to keep. But if there are things that we can move out of the library budget to another budget, that would help us reduce that 19%, right? So it's 19% of a figure, so it's only 20% off the top, but it would be an overall savings long term. But it's a matter of how much of the operational budget that the town want to absorb in supporting the library, and how much, you know, autonomy the library needs to have to run its business, so to speak. So I don't know where that math is, and maybe that's something we need to look at over the course of the next year, but that would be a potential way to pull down 19% of the overall, right? Like you're talking a percentage of a percentage, but it would be a potential savings in the long term. It's just a matter of how does the town want to operate and how does the county.
Well, that's actually a good idea. I mean, so Greg, take something like electricity and heating, right? I mean, to me, it's left pocket, right pocket, whether it's here or, you know, you put it on the town budget, right? We're paying it either way, right? But to his point, if you were able to, and I'm just picking those two, but if you're able to swap them over into the town hallways, then that addresses the 19% there.
It's way to
Yeah.
lower that a bit.
So I mean,
It's a fair point. Sorry, Mike, Sarah's had her hand up for a bit. Sarah?
Yeah, I'm wondering why the building repairs are not in the facilities budget. I thought we had moved that type of thing to facilities budget. Am I wrong?
I had the same thought.
We kept some in, you know, like fire has some and the library has some. So we haven't eliminated them completely in the individual budgets, but again, that's a direction that we can go.
It would certainly would help with the books number.
Well, it doesn't hurt because if we're gonna pay it regardless, right? What difference does it make if we pay it out left pocket or right pocket?
I'm not objecting.
Is the 19% at this point use an amount which is more than is actually needed?
So that's an excellent question. I thought of while I was explaining the issue that I would need Cynthia to
I
answer.
mean, I will say that we have not had trouble spending our materials budget ever. We usually spend more than is in our budget line. And given the increase in costs of certain items such as our databases, you know, I just today, I'm looking at, you know, $200 increase, 23% increase in the cost of one database. So everything needs to be relooked at in terms of, you know, can we still afford to have this? And the electronic materials is driving that books and materials budget higher than ever. The other piece that I don't know, again, whether the math would work out is that in addition to that materials requirement spending of 19%, we have an overall municipal appropriation requirement also by law in order to certify library of the state. And that is based on the previous 3 years appropriation. And there needs to be a 2.5% increase over the average of the previous 3 years budget.
So that's a requirement about the amount of increase, I believe. Percent increase. Is there also a percentage relative to the town's overall spending that has to be spent on the library?
Well, that's what that is. The municipal spending on the library has to be 2.5% higher than the previous 3 years average.
No, but what Peter's saying is, and I think the answer to his question is no. Peter's saying is there's some formula that says the total town budget is $40 million and you gotta spend
Exactly.
$10 million.
No,
There's not that requirement. So I understand expenses are rising, got it. I was just asking the question about the 19%. If we're thinking about trying to craft the budgets to enable that number to be smaller, would that constrain what is in fact the acquisition of books and electronic materials and the other things you're speaking of? And I'm not sure I know the answer to that given what you've said. It is, I don't know if there's that latitude. Is that
My view would I feel like we need more research on that. But
okay?
I would agree. I mean, I think given the fact that, you know, I think it would definitely put a constraint on our budget for books and materials. It would mean that we would have to be more cognizant and perhaps lose some of our books and materials acquisitions money. So, I mean, if we were losing that money, if that budget were lower, if we were lowering that required amount,
Yes.
it might be difficult to continue
So
to.
that sort of takes away
yeah,
the impetus to do something. But I don't know, I mean,
But what I would say is we're potentially lowering the required amount. That doesn't
Right.
necessarily mean.
well, that's what I was asking about, the necessary amount, not the required amount. I'm not quite sure I have the picture here, but I hear that maybe there's some difference of view here.
You know, the problem is the formula is getting complex. It used to be 100 years ago, we acquired, let's say 150 new books a year. Now we're acquiring books, paper printed books, we're acquiring audio books, we're acquiring programs, we're requiring so much broader items up now because the library is becoming a community resource more than just reading material. And as a consequence, the costs are spread in so many different factions now that weren't there 100 years ago, or even 30 years ago. Does that answer your question?
No, it does tell me that there's requirements within the amount for spending within the 19%. I understand that.
Right.
I was wondering if we were to reduce the number, the 19%, what's the ramification on the library? Because I heard that was worth looking at, and I'm not sure.
I would say
It is.
I would say it's worth looking at, but yeah, to Cynthia's point, I'm not sure that we're going to get the answer we want out of it.
I see.
I might have a comment on that. That's not a subtle change to try to do to a budget. there's gotta be some rules. Because otherwise, a lot of towns will start to pull a lot of things out of their budget to try and get that number down, fit within whatever.
Well, and I think it's that 2.5.
So I think that's gotta be part of the research. You can't just start yanking out utilities.
Agree. Yeah, no, and
Stuff.
honestly, I don't even know what,
Otherwise,
I don't know what MBLC would even consider it be something that you can move out of an operational budget, right? Like, we could choose something, electricity may be something that they consider part of operations, and you can't move it, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a very open-ended question.
It's not big dollars though, like even if I just added up a bunch of the, you know, cats and dogs, right, electricity, but I mean, I added 10 different rows, you still get to just under 30 grand, right, which as a percentage of, you know, 553. 8%, I mean,
That's a good point, Mike.
so, and that's pulling out pretty much everything I could see you could, right, because you know the stuff you can't,
Drops your 19% down to 5,000 or 6,000.
yeah, it's better than sharp sticking out.
It's just basically, there's a 19% multiplier happening here, and then there's like apparently a 2.5% multiplier on top of that annually, right? And that's built in. So that's math that's, you can't hide from that. The question is how a bit.
Right, but the way I heard it was, can you show that you've increased the total library budget by 2.5% over the past year? I think we're fine.
We are.
You know,
Yeah. If we start.
But it's only 30,000 out. This is
yes.
sort of reduction.
Right.
Against that population.
right, so like maybe you do 15 and 15, right?
Oh, yeah, I understand.
Do 15 grand this year and 15 grand, you know, like, right? Because if I'm at 3 and I take half of the 30, that's not going to drop me below a 2.5% increase, right? And then you just do the next, you know, 15 year after.
I have just two questions. One is, it looks like you have 4 full-time employees, is that correct?
Yes.
And then various part-time people. And Greg, is this the library folks part of the union?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Clerical or town.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the other question is, do you have any revenues? Is that something to think about?
Late fees.
I think about the infamous book fee, you know, it's like a book that I've had for 20 years. It's like,
I mean, okay, so the replacement fees, if you lose books, if you lose materials, those are coming in for. We do not, we no longer have fines. We're a fines-free library, as in most of Massachusetts at this point. But much of the, you know, the concept of a free public library is to keep things as little revenue bound as possible. And we want our services to be free and open to everyone. And therefore we have, you know, the friends who support us greatly in terms of doing some fundraising to try to, there are gaps, you know, this operational budget is lovely, but it doesn't cover everything. We, you know, rely on their support quite a bit. So I think to think about, yeah, I don't even, like right now, one of the things I'm dealing with is the fact that we provide a printer to the community and you cannot charge what you need to charge to even cover the cost of that printer. I can't make it work. Neither can any other library. So we end up paying and subsidizing, if you will, that printing cost. We do charge for people to print, but it is, and you know, there's a charge for people to, you know, higher charge for color printing, etc. It's a very expensive thing to lease a copier these days and to continually buy the toner needed to have those printouts. It's why no one has a printer in their house anymore and why they still come to the library for it. So yeah.
So why can't you charge a rate that would cover it?
I think at that point no one would probably use it it's so expensive to do.
In dollars, it would.
I probably would have to charge something like $2, $3 a page
Versus right now.
a quarter.
Yes.
25 cents sounds like a lot, doesn't it?
Papers through the. Yes, I wonder why you have the service, not consider service, reduce it down with a simpler system without a whole lot of capital.
I'm trying to figure out if there's a way we could do that,
Yeah,
because right now, I'm shocked.
something less commercial.
Yes, yeah, there's gotta be a better way to.
I don't know how much, throughput you have with the printer, but, it might be. It might be more than,
I mean, maybe there's a happy medium between the 25 cents and $3, you know? Maybe it's $1.50, and at least we're moving in the right direction, and some people might, you know, not do it, but will, and at least closing the gap in terms of the subsidization. I mean, I think like points, but we can look at that. As you understand, like, you know, we have to look at every part of the town budget, and nothing's free, right? I mean, everything costs money, and so whether it's trash, we got to figure out how much out to charge for the orange bags, or water, or sewer, or, you know, parks and rec. I mean, so that's always kind of a component. That's why I'm always bringing up revenue, right? Like, it's, you know, obviously we're not a profit-making business, but we're trying to at least have things, you know, wash, you know.
I mean, I would think just sort of going forward, almost all apartments in town generate a little bit of revenue somehow. Parks and Rec generates a lot of revenue. DPW, not so much, but everybody sort of tries to do a little. I don't know, I would think it would be good to be creative with the library and try to figure out how to do a little bit of.
Well, I agree. To your earlier question, back when we did charge fees, it was a good solid 2 to 3 number figure. It was probably less than $100 we gathered a year, and it just wasn't worth the effort. But so when we think of revenue, right, I think Cynthia mentioned the friends who are here tonight too, right? Like we generate a fair amount of subsidy that augments this budget versus revenue that offsets it, right? So I think you have to think of it revenues in that form versus something coming back into the office.
thoughts, I think.
Right, from a timing perspective, I mean, it'll be too late in the game, try to, you know, do the process we talked about.
No, there's time.
I mean,
Actual shift of some of these,
yeah, I mean,
you take the first 3.
I was gonna say, yeah, I added 1, 2, and 4, because I was trying to divide the 30 grand in half, right? So I took electricity, heating, oil, and comprehensive equipment. That gets you to 14, which is about half of the 29, 30.
There's something to the thought that it needs to be researched. I guess so. One question is, can we research timeframe that we have current budgeting process? So I guess to some degree it's an open question to you all about what kind of effort that might be. It's relatively simple and that's 4 hours a week, figure it out. To our process, we can certainly, you know, for voting on the current budget, you know, for tonight, just proceed with capital. We can see where we are in 2 weeks. Yeah.
I had thought that when we were discussing what to bring into facilities, that we had decided to leave the library here, something to do with that ratio of the 20%. But then it was better off to keep the costs in the library as opposed to the town. But it's kind of a memory. But there might be some relationship there as to why. Because Nate and Chuck have been working quite a bit with this facility with the generator and sump pump, but so it would make sense that that would be part of the facilities if it weren't for this other reason.
Yeah, I think the core question is, like, does the state have rules that we need to observe here about what needs to be in the budget in order to qualify correctly for the 19%? I think that's the question.
I do not believe that they have specific rules about what needs to be.
I see. So you think,
I think the issue a couple of years ago, and I recall what you were talking about, it was the 2.5%. You pulled out the facilities and now your budget was not going up 2.5%. That was a problem. So it's a different problem.
different problem.
But
If you pull out those three we just said and you compare it to the last year actual, I know we don't have 24 actual yet, it's still a 6% increase.
yeah, and that's off the table.
What's that?
The 2.5 is not an issue.
Right. Exactly.
It's not a big difference of bunch of the numbers incorrectly. It's amounts to $700, $2,800 to drop it down, to get the budget down to 2.5%.
Yeah, I was doing more strong, take those three things out, the 14 grand out.
Right. But then,
Andy,
yes,
2.5% over the 3-year average is only 535,000.
oh, it's a 3-year average.
That's, I think, what she said.
Yes,
So,
Yeah.
Okay,
So it's way over that.
okay, of budget.
so, but yes, the previous 3 years of allocations for the library averaged
So
2.5%.
I don't think that's an issue, especially if we're gonna cut the 30 grand in half, which is big.
One other question is, you have help from the Friends, so the total town budget looks like it's 553,737. What's the total operating when you add in the Friends component, or is this the total operating cost of the library in total?
I mean, it is most of the operating cost of the library. I will say that the library state aid that we get, that 5,000 that you mentioned, Mike, and the that we've received 5,000 this year. We will get a second payment. I don't know how much yet this year as well. So it might be 7,000 or something to that effect. That funding gets pushed directly back into library operations. Usually there are areas here where I don't make it with this budget.
Okay.
And so I am relying on that money. In terms of the Friends, I would say that their assistance assists greatly with programming expenses, so we would have fewer for programming. We do have a programming budget here, but it's very minor compared to the number of programs we have. They also provide us with, lots of other things that we, for example, they sponsor the Museum Pass program. So our museum passes that we lend out are all paid for by the Friends. That's a huge piece of the service that we offer to the community. It's hard for me to say exactly what that is, because their budget varies and what they're able to fundraise and what we're able to request. We do request things from them each year. They also will do improvements where it's not an operating budget cost, but they were responsible for furniture, for things like I think they assisted with the clock tower when it needed to be repaired, with the front door being polished, with the landscaping that was done. All of those were items that were paid for through the Friends.
I just want to address that one thing about our community. The Friends do not like to be in the operations business. That's not our job. But we did take on a few years ago, the CPC, previous people redid the landscaping and all the lawn furniture. And the DPW is not take care of the landscaping. They mow the lawns and they do all the basic stuff. So in order to maintain that landscaping, we pay about $1,500 to $1,800 a year, which is an operation fee, which we never really got into, but we kind of, when the landscaping was done, we didn't want it to lose the value of what we've done. This is 3 years ago. I will say the Manchester Garden Club does all the maintenance, and this is not unusual for libraries. I checked around. I'm the president of Friends, and I checked around when I found out we were going to pay this landscaping bill. And this is not an uncommon thing for Friends to do. If they undertake to improve the landscaping, which is more than just pruning trees and mowing the lawn, then they undertake to maintain it. So that's about the only operating thing we do on a yearly basis. But we do supply a lot of the yearly programs to reading and a lot of other stuff.
That's, as if to say, that's great. I guess the question is, if the Friends next year or the year after couldn't contribute to the library, and that added benefit went down, the question I have is the town liable or required to pick up the delta? Is there something happening there that you would be like, oh gee, this is on the budget because it used to be covered by Friends and isn't now?
I don't think that, personally, I don't think that's the issue. I think the Friends have been around for almost 75 years to supply these enriching experiences. I think the only thing that happens, we don't have a lot of visibility in town. A lot of people don't realize that we're paying for a lot of this stuff. I think you have a lot of irate patrons calling you and saying, why aren't we doing it? But there's no requirement of the budget to do that.
Yeah, I think what you would see would be a reduction in the number of programs that we offer, right? Services would go down, and the furnishing things would get beat up and old and not replaced. And people would start to wonder what's going on. There's things that the Friends do that aren't necessarily on an annual basis, but are as needed. Right.
Just total dollars, forget about whether it's operating capital or cash. High level, how many dollars per year that the Friends picks over to library?
That's interesting because we're really developing a budget now, which I don't have all the expenses for, but fixed expenses that we do every year right now, off the top of my head, I know of, and I don't have a list because I don't.
Yeah, I'm just like, is it 10 grand, 100 grand, 500?
I'd say it's not, I'd say, I don't know. I mean, I know right now I can think of about $2,500 of just stuff that goes out the window before we even get a request from them for programs and stuff like that. You know, just like the maintenance, the landscaping and the decorating for this Christmas and that kind of thing, that adds up to close to $3,000. So that's not doing any programs, which I don't really have right now. I mean, I didn't come here prepared to, you know.
I mean, do you have a feel for that number?
I do not have a feel for that number. I've only been here since October, so it's a little hard for me to know exactly what the costs are for Friends. But the reality is, I think it's as Rick stated, that it's not, you know, it's not, the Friends are an organization that are fundraising for our benefit, for the benefit of our community. But they should not be paying operational costs. The library needs to run. It's not a for-profit organization, as we mentioned, you know. It is service intensive, which means, you know, money is coming off the top. But it is a very important piece of this community. And a community like Manchester needs a top of the line library. And it is a piece of the cultural, educational landscape of this town. And I think, you know, we have to be responsible enough to at least give it the funding it needs to run operationally and to maintain the building, which is a municipal building.
Yeah, I'm not trying to come out and say the Friends should be paying towards operational or not. And I'm also not suggesting that the Friends is going to go away. I'm sure they're going to stay around, and that's fantastic. I'm just trying to get a feel for the big picture of, you know, like I look at the $500 whatever $1,000, just trying to figure out is there another 100 grand a year that flows in that's kind of behind the scenes, or is it more like 5 or 10 grand?
It's not that high.
No.
I'm just trying to get a feel, that's all. Right, we're finance people, right? You think about the
I
budgets
think
and
you're
dollars.
safe in the 5 to 10 grand
Okay.
range.
That's all I need.
And it probably, to Sheila's
Well, it
point.
varies, like one year.
1 year will be more.
6,000 for
Yeah,
the.
call it 2 to 10, anything or whatever, right? Yeah, that's fine.
10,000 for the club. I mean, it depends on the year. Yeah, I mean, one year it's $10,000 because we did the clock. One year it was, you know, it's among all the other things. One thing we added $3,500 for the fireplace amongst all the other things we did. This year, we're gonna do the Zoom thing, right?
But it's not 50 grand, it's
No.
not 100 grand.
No, no.
Yeah.
Right,
If
so,
we lived in a bigger town.
sorry, so can I just get a sense from the group, are folks interested in voting on budget tonight, or are you interested in?
I'm
trying to
interested
hear
in
what
having
the-
Greg explore whether we can move those 3 things over to the town.
My reactions to both the budget.
I'm okay voting the budget tonight.
I just don't think there's a big enough issue here to beat up.
I mean, if Greg comes back with details, we could always revisit.
Well, how about this? We vote on the budget, but there's a footnote that says if Greg does this research, we can still pull it over, or no? Is that too late? You know what I'm saying?
Not until early March.
Yeah,
We have plenty of time.
we can do
No, but what I'm saying is, if we vote on the budget and we agree, right?
You can leave this.
Then well, what I'm saying is we've agreed on all the line item numbers. I'm saying,
Just location back.
correct, that's what I'm saying. Is it a big deal to then on a subsequent date? Okay,
It's the funding source, right? The funding source is a little different. That's what we're talking about here, correct?
Right,
This is Sarah. We need to finalize every single budget by March 6th.
Right.
We're running out of time.
You've also tried to have true cost accounting, by department. So this gets away from that.
Yeah.
agreed, but there is a unique reason.
But Mike, if we move this out, we're changing every other budget.
Why?
Because if we move stuff out of here, it has to go somewhere else.
Hey, just put it in town hall.
So which we voted on, or DPW we voted on.
Yeah.
Or
It's all feasible, but it's just to say,
it's moving pieces.
So if somebody wants to make a motion, we could do as we were just talking about, voted tonight, and if there's, a better idea that we all kind of grab onto in a couple of weeks, there's time to do something about it, we can do that.
All right, but how about this, at a bare minimum, can we agree that for the following fiscal year, like, that's like a starts today kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
That's a good idea. I mean, I would make a motion if we approve the library budget in the amount of $553,737 for operating and salaries.
All right, Maury makes the motion, Peter seconds. Let's take a vote then. Dean?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Maury?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes, and I just want to raise your attention to the fact that Eli Bowling's had his hand up.
I saw that, and Andy votes yes.
so, yeah, I saw your hand, Eli. Go ahead.
Hey, folks. So I just wanted to make a comment about some of the discussion earlier about the notion of the library being encouraged to generate revenue. And I'd be very careful about running down that particular slippery slope. I believe there's some law wrapped around and endorsing and enshrining the notion that libraries are critical to the fabric of the country. And the idea of requiring them to become profit and loss centers is profit and loss centers is a kind of a dangerous place to go. And I know you're not, suggesting that they become an actual enterprise, But I would strongly recommend that you not go too far down that road of saying, oh, we need the library to pay its fair share. They're there to provide access to material that is supposed to be free for everybody. There are still people who go there to get their email. There are still people who go there to go online and participate in what's available to most of us on a regular day-to-day basis over our phones, and to push them into the position of having to generate revenue to survive and kind of potentially push those people out, that's a place where I think you need to take some serious time to consider whether or not you really want to do that. I think that's a place where this community should stand up and support the libraries and support the people who rely on the libraries. And I'll point out something that I've been finding interesting about the libraries, and that is people go there for the weirdest sorts of information. They find the library a center of a central resource for help in ways that are really intangible. People try to find out if particular things are open, and they go to ask people at the library if that's the case. So I would take a careful look, and when you think about asking the library, can they generate more revenue for the things that they provide? Thank you.
So I just want to make a counter comment to that. So number one, I don't want to speak for Maury, but I don't think the phrase I heard was forcing or requiring. I think what Maury was saying is, let's just try to think outside the box and see if there is opportunity to generate some revenue, number one. Number two, I'd argue every department that we look at is critical. And the one I'm going to throw out now is like the fire department, right? The fire department is extremely critical and they generate revenue, right? How are we coming at it saying they have to generate that revenue to, cover all their costs? Of course not. And they don't. But the point is, there is some revenue generated from that department, which it helps, right? It helps defray the total cost.
Yeah. All right.
So before we move on, I just want to be sure this is, in order to measure the 19% compliance, to take $100,000 and divide it by 5,337. Is that the correct math? Because that's 18% when I do that. Is this compliant?
No.
Did I do the math wrong?
No, the 19% is 105,210. And we make up the difference. I believe that's what the figure I had said 19% of this budget is that. We will make up the difference in purchasing those materials using gift funds that are specifically earmarked for materials.
Thank you. Just wanted to be sure we didn't pass a budget that didn't apply.
How does that sound, Mike?
Thank you.
All right, shifting gears to capital. So Greg shared a memo that so simply put together a memo outlining 3 capital requests. So this is a change from what you on the preliminary budget, which the total is the same, but it's partitioned out differently. So the 3 elements that are being proposed, $150,000 for pursuing expansion, renovation, design efforts. This would be applied towards an application to the state. The state would match up to $100,000 towards that effort. But we don't know exactly what the total cost of that effort will be, but we know it won't be more than $250 now. But if we put that anticipated. So that's request number 1 is that 150. That was in the original preliminary budget. And then instead of $50,000 for a complete redo of the walkways, what is being proposed now is repair of the walkway for 6,500. And then the balance, the 43,500, would be put towards a new assessment of the building. Goes back to some of the earlier conversations we're having about the every year surprise of what's happening at the building.
Right.
This would provide a very detailed assessment of the condition of the building, prioritize what needs fixing and attention in the multi-year plan. And it also is a necessity for a complete grant application to the state. So it's still the same 200,000 that was being requested originally.
Yeah.
And as you know, there was 200,000 for the handicap restroom, new restroom for the building. That ended up not going forward because it was just too hard to fit that in without compromising a lot of the other activities and space in the current building.
That was the ultimate reason. It just was too difficult to make it just fit.
When we take over 10% of our book space with no alternative plans to where to put those extra those books. Our little shoe is just packed too tight. We just don't have enough room. Perfect.
So Greg, can I ask a question about this? It's a mechanical question. If this was approved, went before the voters, essentially was taxed. And now if it wasn't doing this, it would fall to reserves, or I guess it's an unallocated capital expenditure that's carried forward. Right?
Maury, we voted to return it to free cash several months ago.
Right. So I am concerned about appropriating money for capital projects that don't go through. And it's one thing if something happens, but this looks like an engineering planning shortfall that led to capital allocation that didn't get used. That's a little concerning.
So the 200 for the restroom.
200K, yeah. Yeah.
So we taxed everyone for it, I guess. I mean, as it was included in the budget and taxed for it and when it was appropriate. And then it wasn't used, so I think Sarah, then we voted to put it back into cash, is that correct?
Yes, that was one of the projects that we voted to return to free cash.
Right, correct.
Right, the cash was collected.
Yes.
It was taxed and collected, number one. Then it was just sitting in a cash account as an unallocated item. Right. And then to Sarah's point, we voted a couple of months ago to move it from this suspense account or whatever you want to call it, down into free cash, where now at least it can be used. Before it was just sitting there, cash in the bank, not being able to use for anything.
Yeah, I guess my note on this, and my concern on this is that we're allocating money for a capital project that's not well planned, not well engineered, and ends up sitting and then ends up not happening. And I think when we go before the voters and ask for approval for capital and operating, it's presumed that the homework's been done and it's a go, or it's gonna go. And this is just, we don't hear about this often, but I will point out that it's good we don't hear it often, but it is a concern. So,
and to your point, it's very different than say water pipes. Water pipes is like, right, we approve it on the budget, it gets taxed, and right, sure as you know what, Chuck is spending on pipes, right? Like there's no question, right? I believe like, if there's a bunch of cash sitting somewhere, unallocated, unused, that kind of stuff.
Sarah?
Yes.
We voted it into cash. Is that what the source that we would use, or Greg, is that the source we would use?
Well, I think Greg is talking about reappropriating it because if it goes into free cash, we don't have it available till next year.
I see.
I think it's a timing issue. Is that right, Greg?
So for the building assessment, I would recommend that we use free cash in order to move forward with that right after the town meeting, rather than wait until July, because of the timing of the grant application. So that's why I would recommend that. Regardless of the old money, this particular task is time sensitive.
Thanks, I didn't know that piece.
So is everything that's not spent going into free cash? It's not reappropriated? That's what we
Sorry?
voted on.
So the 200,000 is in your free cash account.
But the problem, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the free cash is a fungible amount of cash. So to try to like specifically identify, right, a particular 200 grand of cash in the free cash, right?
It's involved again.
Correct. It's correct. It's all commingled.
I thought it didn't go to free cash until it was sent back from capital projects. It wasn't spent, but it's not counted in free cash because it's appropriated. So it's not it's cash at the town, but it's not in the free cash account because it's been appropriated and not spent. In order for it to go to free cash, we have to have it returned.
Yeah, I thought this started by Sarah saying a couple months ago we voted.
It was in the summer.
It did notice, but free cash is as of June 30th of the year. So
We voted it, but it didn't happen.
Didn't we do it after June 30th, Sarah?
Yes,
We
we
did
did.
during the summer when we went through all the capitals.
So
In the fall, yes.
it is not technically in the state certified free cash.
Okay.
Right.
We voted it, but it has not happened. And it wouldn't happen until June 30 or July 1.
And that's your whole point, is they have to wait till June 30 to have it be available.
So you can have, this particular vote could be a reappropriation of a few $100,000.
Okay.
So that's, we've done that before.
Okay.
So reappropriation in the sense that we're pulling back that which we were voting to go to free cash, or reappropriation that it has to go back?
Let's hold off on this discussion till we discuss the whole funding strategy for capital
It's
for the 28th.
It's sort of a administrative detail of how we handle it.
Okay, all right.
Separate from should we be doing. I think that's really what's on the table tonight.
Well, just following a little bit more, there was also money reappropriated to the basement dewatering stuff. Should we put that on hold pending this?
That's separate, I think.
That's separate.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a question about the how the grant works for just a second. So this 150 is a match. That you can get up maybe to 100,000. So is the match 50-50 or not?
It's 50-50, but they only go up to 100,000. So if it
So why are we putting 150 as opposed to 100? I mean, if we're matching.
because that is what we are required to
That's the cost.
to get.
Oh, that's the cost
That's the cost of what?
of the
proposed
stuff.
Of the stuff.
Got it.
For design.
That is
right?
not the cost. That is not the cost. That is. So if it were to turn out that the cost for the design portion of the grant was 200,000, then they would pay 100,000 and we would pay 100 of the 150. For some reason, the way the grant is, a requirement is that we need the town to appropriate 100. Well, we need it to be appropriated that there's up to 150 from the town or from local funds to pay for this. But it is a 50% match. So if it cost 150, then we each be paying 75,000.
What if it costs 400?
Then. So what we've been told is that it doesn't cost that much. It should not cost that much. And so that's why the amount is the amount.
So the 250 total came from somewhere.
Came from the state. They say, we think it's going to cost you a maximum of 250,000 to do this kind of study. So therefore, town, we're going to require you to appropriate 150 and we'll give you 100 of that if you need it. But they say if it comes lower than the 250, if it's below 200, we'll match you 50-50.
Yeah, I'm not worried lower. I'm worried that the state came up with the 250 and that's not the private sector. And you know, Andy's company comes out with 400 grand. Like that's fine. So I'm not trying to put it
I mean, the library construction program has been around for a very long time. It's been funding libraries, so they do have some basis, I think.
And what will the study do? What is the purpose of
the study? Is a planning and design grant that will look at
come up with, based on a library building program, which we are in the process of doing right now, which is essentially an imaginative look of what library services should be, what the town needs, what the town wants in terms of their library service for the next 30 years, okay? And then that becomes the basis by which you hire an architect and they plan a library that fulfills these needs based on the library building plan from the community. And then it's proposed for construction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure, that makes sense, but
So
and that's what this does.
So, yeah, so the up to 250,000 will get you a report that shows here's what your ideal library looks like, and here are a couple of options on where you could build it and how much it will cost you. So you could expand in place. That's one option that you might look at. You can relocate and build a new library, and this is how much it will probably cost. Your probable cost estimate.
It doesn't come up with architect's plans, it's just simply conceptual.
There is a plan. There is a plan, but it's not to what do you call that? It's not the schematics, like it's not a plan you can use to construct with, but there is an actual plan that comes out of that, which is not two options. We provide them with two sites to look at, but they prepare one design, one plan for a library to fulfill these.
I just want to see if I ever listen to Andy over the years. I mean, this is just the study, in buckets of cost. After that, you've got.
So it sounds to me like you go through up to like what they call schematic design.
It's a little beyond schematic.
Okay. And then,
maybe 25%.
So it allows you to come up with a budget for a given scope for your project, and then based on that budget, that money is appropriated, and then you finish the design and you put it out to bid, and there you go.
So after this, you got still a big bucket of what? Engineering, drawings.
Yeah, you get some design costs, and you know that can be up to 8, 9, 10% of the total project budget.
Right. So then once you have this 150 match plan, it's submitted to the state, and if the state approves it, they automatically provide, you know, a grant amount. But I don't say automatically. It still goes before the town, and the town votes on whether or not to accept that.
Right.
And I think, you know, if I'll just point out in the back of this form goes over a little bit like what that would look like. The grant amounts for the construction piece of it are under there, and sort of a basic scenario. How the funding could work.
Right.
Beyond that.
So this is that sort of program that we were talking about a couple of months back, where you know, this is what the state does for school projects, and there's some different. And so you would get you would be qualify for state funding for the actual construction costs, you know, a percentage. Yeah.
Never 100% though, right?
No.
So how did they?
No.
It's my joke.
Oh, I did. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and you can see in the table at the bottom, we don't know how much an expansion would cost, so we assume $10 million just to kind of give you a working example. Yeah. And if you factor in, you know, other funds we have, I think you're aware, we have what we call the library trust funds. There's also the foundation, so we put a line item in there. We can cover, you know, 12.5% based on the $10 million assumed cost. We assumed $1 million in private donations. I mean, obviously, we would have a lot of lead time. We think if we were accepted into the program, and by the way, I think this was obvious, but just because the town approves and we appropriate 150, if we don't advance, money goes back to the town, by the way. But we think we'll gain momentum once we're into this program with the state and people see how much money is available, that they would, you know, be excited about helping us to fill the gap. So that's why we put $1 million in there. And then, you know, other private grants funds from other towns that have gone through this, they've been able to obtain private grants relating to like, you know, green buildings and cultural commissions. So we thought this chart was very important because it's better than saying to you, you know, the state will cover 50 to 60%, the town covers the rest. We think we can get to close to a place where the town only covers 20%. And, you know, that obviously it's not nothing, you know, $2 million, but when you think of all of the library needs, the calamities, as Dave said, that would happen between now and 2029, the grant is not for maintenance and repair, but you know, our hope is that we expand the current site, and that's going to solve a lot of problems. It's going to solve the ADA problem, a lot of just the aging building problems. And in addition to that, we think, and I know a lot of the initial questions that everyone has is why now? There's so many other needs, but as we highlighted at the top, the last grant round was 7 years ago, and the next round could be in 5 to 7 years. So we've been accepted into this because of the letter of intent that was, you know, put together last year. We've had our consultant. We really feel, you know, good about where we are and want to build the momentum, and think it also solves some of the space needs that are going on in town. Obviously, we have the community center, the senior center. We think the library, in addition to just needing its own meeting spaces, study spaces, children's programming spaces, can really help fill the gap for some of these other, you know, important town needs that don't have physical space right now. And then one other thing I would say about different town needs is that you guys are probably aware the school, the high school doesn't have a school librarian. And so, you know, the schools are relying more and more on our public library. And I think, you know, I personally have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old in the school system. And I joined the board because I really would love to see this project go through. I grew up in Duxbury. When I was 13 or 14, we had an MDLC grant and a new building, and it was just life-changing because, you know, small town, there's not really that much to do, to have a library that can just really provide resources, and a lot of, you know, group studying in high school. And then even honestly, I'm a lawyer, studied through the bar exam. I remember being there. So it can be just this huge resource for the town that I think a lot of people were really excited about this moment. I know a lot of parents are very excited about Parks and Recreation has going to provide us with some babysitting at town meetings. So I think you'll see a lot of us out there, obviously for the school committee as well, but I mean, for the school budget as well. But I know we kind of jumped in with the numbers. I think I started with a very nice PowerPoint, which if anyone wants it, happy to share. But through many iterations, we landed on this to give you the hard facts because we know you're finance people. But I think it was sort of important to take a step back and talk about all the reasons why we think now is the time.
Andy, would you have her state her name for Gail?
I'm sorry?
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, could you state
your Sarah Davis.
And address, I think.
Oh, 11 Highland Avenue.
Yeah.
She's a trustee.
Yes.
Thank you.
Was that your question, Gail?
That was the answer.
And I don't think I'm visible.
That's right.
No, you're not.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I have a question about the grant. Sorry to be a little confused. So the intent is it'll be a 50-50 match. That's your intent, I think. Go forward if the math is not, if it's 100,000 from the state and the cost is 225 for the study, are we going forward if it's not a 50-50 match? Mathematically?
If it's not a 50-50 match and we have the 150 appropriated for it, we would spend up to 200.
I see. So from our point of view, it's not just, we wouldn't go forward if it wasn't matched 50-50. The match could vary within that mathematic range.
Yes.
And if there was no grant? We could go forward with this if there was no grant? I think the answer is no. I think that's what the text said, but I want to be sure I understand that.
Yeah.
So there needs to be a grant, number one. I don't know whether there's a minimum grant that you require in order to go forward. Because if the state doesn't provide, if it's not a 50-50, then is there an outside parameter in terms of, from our point of view, is what we know that up to 150 can be spent. That's the way the deal works.
Yes.
But it won't be spent if there's no grant.
That's the 150 is the bottom line, right?
Correct.
Yeah, it would not be spent if
So if
there
it's
was.
20,000, then grant, you go forward and have $170,000.
No,
Okay,
Oh.
I just want to make sure that that's the
So
way
it's,
it works.
it's dollar for dollar up to $100,000.
I understand, but what if they don't give you 100,000? Say they give you 20?
There's no other option for as
Oh,
far as.
is it 100? Is it
It's
100 or nothing?
50, 100,000.
And I thought I heard that you were accepted into the state's program, so there will be some.
So
We're accepted to apply.
we're accepted to apply at this point. So the application requires this,
I see.
for the town.
You're
to
invited to apply.
Part
Yep.
of your bona fides.
Okay.
What does that mean, invited to apply?
It's a competitive grant.
It's like
Just like the
Essex
school.
Elementary being accepted into the.
Is it like saying you have a grant before you actually get it?
No, you're qualified to move forward. You're in a sort of a review process. It's just a winnowing down process. So 351 towns, not all are going to apply, but it's just a winnowing down.
And it's a big undertaking to do the application. I mean, the foundation appropriated the money to hire a consultant to help us with the application because it's a very serious undertaking. The building plan that Cynthia mentioned required going out to the community and soliciting feedback on the needs of the library. So we did 3 or 4 focus groups.
7 focus.
Oh, 7?
groups were-
Okay.
And 2 public meetings, which were not highly attended, and a survey, which is still going on.
Okay. So we're accepted. I got that. But I was trying to figure out what happens with the mathematics. If there's 100,000 or nothing is the way the grant works.
Peter, let's say,
150 or not.
yeah, let's say that the cost, the total cost is 225,000. The state's going to give us 100,000. We're going to be responsible for 125.
I understand. That's a simple example. What happens if they give you 25?
That's not how it works.
No, Peter, you're gonna think of it like a 401k match, where the company matches you dollar for dollar up to a certain amount. And then once you go above it, the
I see.
company's out.
Right.
Nice.
Okay, it's like that.
They guarantee up to 100.
So dollar for dollar up to 100 grand, once you go above a total of 200 grand,
Correct.
now it's on you.
Okay. 250. And so they give you 50. The match is up to 50, and then we just use our money to cover the balance.
no.
They're going to give us 50 if the whole cost is 100,000.
They're dollar for dollar, all the way up to a total amount of 200 grand.
So regardless of what, so they'll take the total cost and give you half up to 100, but I understand that, but what happens? The state has the latitude to come up with any number, doesn't it?
No.
No,
It's a 50-50 match up to $100,000.
I call it a dollar for dollar match.
Dollar for
A
dollar.
dollar for dollar match up to a total of 200 grand, right? And then once you go above that, it's all on you.
Yep.
It's based on spend, not on gift.
And they're not gonna analyze the application and say, we're gonna give you 50 cents on the dollar up to 100. Yeah. It's dollar for dollar.
So just to understand this is to move forward. And if the town allocates 150 and the state matches with 100, and then we don't get selected, what happens is our 150 basically just stays with us and goes back into free cash.
Correct.
Okay, and then we don't move forward.
Sure.
And if we are accepted, then we move forward in this development study and we're on the tracks to move forward.
Sure.
Right. So I have just 2 questions going forward. One is to Andy. Is 10 million a reasonable number, do you think, for a library expansion? And then the second question is for you, Greg, which is, I agree with friends and others donating money to this project, but at the end of the day, when it comes to paying the contractor, isn't it the town and the state who are the 2 ones writing the checks? We may get reimbursed from other sources, but don't we have to raise the taxpayer money to balance the construction cost?
Not if those donated funds are already in game.
Okay, so they can come out of like a
The donations
revolving
account.
fund or donations account, and the taxpayers don't have to
Correct.
float it. Okay. Good. So
Right, so obviously it depends on how big an expansion it is, whether you're sort of building out that expansion, including site costs, or whether you're sort of expanding on your existing footprint somehow. You know, but so the cost can vary widely. Are you going to match the existing building architecture using similar materials, or are you going to just simply try to complement it with something a little bit more affordable? You know, stone is expensive. Slate could be expensive. So there's a lot of variation there. So I'm not sure how many square feet, or if you've even honed in on that kind of thing through your initial plan.
I mean, we don't have it yet. We will have sort of an ideal square footage as part of the line rebuilding program.
I mean, that's specifically what comes out of this next step, right? This like,
which is high level with this 10 million snow. This is your world, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, again, if you're building out, you know, 10,000 square feet, it could be reasonable, $1,000 a foot. But again, depending on
depends on
just foundations, drainage.
To give you a comparison, we have almost 7,000 square feet right now.
So you're not going to set on 10,000.
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, no, maybe a few thousand.
Can I ask a timing question? So if we do this, and then if the state accepts, and now you're on the track, and just like with the school, is there a like window by which like you have to break ground? Like,
if this is like the school SBA program, and I suspect it is, then there's a timeline.
Yeah, there is kind of a timeline.
Thanks for timeline on
It kind of talks about that. April of 2026 is where, if we were offered a construction grant, the town would need to vote to accept that or not. At that.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so ultimately, you know, once you get through the end of that initial planning and that schematic design and you come up with a project budget, that's what has to get then appropriated at town meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd like to,
yeah,
so,
yeah, so it's pretty far out after all.
Regarding the scope of the study, I believe there is a need and that a study is needed. One lesson that we learned with the bathroom expansion is that it's very difficult to just blow out the walls and the roof on a stone building with a slate roof. Would this study be considering like just a separate annex type structure as opposed to widening the existing? Is that something that might be considered, whether it be remote or immediately adjacent, but so that you don't have to get into that matching the existing and you don't mess with that kind of historical building, but maybe an annex in the Cynic's property behind that's willed or something more remote somewhere else?
I mean, I think it's certainly everything is on the table at this point because we don't know. And I think when you give a library building plan to an architect, that's their thing, is to listen to what you said you need and then come up with options. Massachusetts has a bazillion historic libraries where they have done this type of thing before. Some of them are, you know, attached, some of them are connected through a hallway, you know, with complementary or some other type of architecture. I think having an annex that's really far is a little bit problematic in terms of staffing and operating.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that I would say.
I agree.
I think, you know, that is you know, we would absolutely have to have an architect who is, you know, in that site, taking into account that architectural.
So it's more than just the building assessment of existing conditions, but it's going to look at a path forward with regards to whether to widen the existing building or build something adjacent to it, or
that's what this
remote.
Design grant is.
If it's like the school program,
then they require you to look at renovation, addition, new repairs, things like that.
Yeah.
So I'm a little mindful of the time. Yeah.
I'll just make one last high level on this. I'm not coming at the study. I'm coming at the broader picture, and you can file this under Kill the Messenger, but I'm going to call it math just because that's what we deal with a lot. And I can't get math to work. And what I mean is, I look at all the capital projects that we got staring us in the face, right? We got wastewater treatment plant, we got PFAS, we got a potential Essex Elementary, we got fire, police, DPW, regular ongoing sewer water pipes. Like, I just, you know, we only got a certain amount of cash in the bank, right? And it's not $100 million, it's not 50 million, it's not even 10 million. And obviously we can borrow money, but even there's capacity, right? You can only borrow so much in the bond market, so like, we're not gonna let you borrow any more because, you know what I mean? Like that's, you know, I can't get all the math to work. It's just like too much all at once. You gotta make choices, right? That's why we're here, to make hard choices.
But go ahead with the study, but you're absolutely right. I mean, we're looking at $100 million potentially in various kinds of capital projects. But
and so if it is, you can't do 100 million. You can't do 100 million in 5 years, right? You've gotta stress that, right?
So to that, we've got Essex Elementary, which is probably a good solid half of that number.
Yeah, you call that 40, call that 40, PFAS 20.
Talking about DPW move, which this might displace. It is about the choices.
I just can't get it to work.
It really is. Some things we've been talking about for a while. We'll have to stop.
Okay, so understanding that, is there an appetite to make a motion on the proposed funding here for the purpose of at least getting to an understanding of what that would look like for that?
do you want them separately, 2 separate motions, or 2 capital projects here?
Yeah, I'd prefer to vote them separately.
Okay.
With the greatest percentage.
So it's 3. So I'll take a motion on the request for $150,000 toward matching funds for the grant application for the state feasibility study.
Second.
Okay. Any more discussion? Dean, approve?
Yes.
Mike?
No.
Maury?
Yes.
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And Andy votes yes. All right, then the second is a proposed $6,500 for repair of the walkway to address safety issues.
Can I just ask a question on that before there's a motion? So initially there was a whole walkway replacement, I believe, going on. I gather you reconsidered that. And that was thought to be the approach at that time because there was not these other things going on, or maybe there's some improved condition of the walkway, or something happened to make the project change.
Well, you know, if we go forward with
Well,
new library addition and restoration, perhaps a more sophisticated walkway could be built into that, and the state could pay 50% of the cost, rather than have the town pay 100% of the more expensive walkway.
So it's the marrying into the projects made the thing have to be perceived differently. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm sure I got a motion, but
I move that we appropriate $6,500 for the repair of the walkway, the library.
I will second.
for discussion.
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And Andy votes yes. So the third request is $43,500 for a full condition assessment of the library.
Can you speak to this just a bit? I know the math all works, but I think
so. This is a precedent to, and separate from the what we were talking about for so long.
Yeah, we do have to provide a condition assessment if our site remains the same for our application procedure. But to go back to your point about the fact that it's not great to have projects that are funded and then not done. This is really something we need regardless, because we need to understand what our capital needs are. And the only way that we can do that is to have a full condition assessment. Nate is on with us today. If you have questions about that, he also agrees that we need a better understanding of what's needed and what are the priorities for capital expenses.
Isn't that part of the bigger review? Isn't that part of the 150, 250?
So I think this is analogous to, go back to the school example again. So for Essex, there's this, what's referred to as the Habib report. So it's an existing condition study that's part of the district's application to get that project accepted or considered by the state. So this is a similar effort to get a condition report on the library. And
existing condition
enumerates all the shortcomings and comes up with sort of a repairs number. And then that becomes part of the application that goes to the state.
But at a minimum, wouldn't they have to be not concurrent, right? It sounds like this thing would have to occur before the other thing.
Yeah, the condition.
Is this a condition report? It's part of the, it's part of the application before the other. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So this would happen right away.
Right. Which is part of why you're looking at some timelines in that separate attachment that you provided that go up toward.
So what kind of an entity would do this?
Probably a architectural firm that has some experience with public buildings. Engineer, structural engineer, civil engineer, if there's any site issues.
Can I comment too, because I don't want this to be just totally tied to the grant. I mean, it's fine for that, but this kind of goes to the point of we keep coming to you guys with emergency actions, right? Collapsing ceilings, flooded basements, what have you. And we don't want to have to continue to do that so that you guys aren't prepared, right? And this would help us, help you, so to speak, whether or not the grant goes forward or not, knowing what the existing condition of the library is, so we can plan for those repairs and remediation as needed.
Understood. So it's not separately just a vehicle for this.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to add anything, Nate. Sorry.
Yeah, Nate, could you give us just a couple of quick minutes on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as Cynthia said, this is twofold. It meets a requirement of the grant. The grant has very specific language of what they're looking for in terms of condition assessment. And then also it helps benefit us as they were saying that, it will help us project our future needs, as we plan out our projects. So I think it's very timely that this has come along. I think we've seen how things crop up, like we have with the chimney and the ceiling. Those are, as everyone said, it's a very old building. These things are going to continue to crop up. So I think would be very prudent to have, as Andy said, very specific engineers, structural engineers, mechanical engineers come in and do a top to bottom, assessment of the entire building that gives us a baseline, not only, as he said, for this grant, but just for ourselves to know so we can plan going into the future.
So then, even if I took the grant expansion and all that stuff and I just put it over here.
Yeah.
This is like a real expensive home inspection. So the value is they're going to find, right? They're going to find the foundation problems that I would want to know so that I can plan, right?
Yes, that's a good analogy.
Yep, exactly.
So to that point, if we didn't go forward with a project at the library, then we would have this kind of laundry list of things that we need to start attacking.
And at least it helps instead of emergency, like, hey, I need the foundation fixed tomorrow. At least you can plan and say you need the foundation fixed a year out.
Prioritize which are more pressing.
And I think I heard this precedes. This is the first step. in This study. Great.
All right. So could I have a motion on the proposed $43,500 for a full condition assessment of the library?
Second.
Okay, Maury moves, Peter seconds. Any more discussion? Dean? Approve? Mike?
Yes.
Maury?
Yes.
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Says yes. Any other business?
That's a flag race.
That was, that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
We haven't done this
Not everybody.
Yeah, yeah, no.
No. Good conversation. We haven't had this kind of happen for a while. Good morning. Yeah. No, it's just. It's just that one.
Cheryl's been patiently waiting, you're the first portion of this meeting. Sorry, Cheryl, we're out time.
My committee had all that Valentine's plans tonight.
Yeah,
They're like,
sorry.
my entourage.
Hey, thank you.
Yes. Right.
Okay.
So, sorry, on the budget itself, not budget, additional budget, 166.
All right, so looks like salaries are up 5.2%. I know past years we've had a lot of movement on, you know, the hourly rates for some of our lifeguards and all that kind of thing.
Which isn't even up that
That's not even that.
particular line now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that, is really based on longevity changes. Therefore.
So part of it's union driven, and again, the 24 budget was under budgeted because of the adjustment we made, which aren't reflected in that, so that increase is artificially inflated.
I got it.
Because you're not seeing the actual budgeted, because we supplemented the actual, we supplemented the budget. So that 156,704 number for this current year is actually higher because we had a supplement to salaries. Because if you remember, we didn't have the union contract settled, and then we did a lump sum additional monies for salary. So you're seeing that throughout.
Got it. Right, and that's really the only increase we're seeing.
Yeah, everything else was level funded.
Not even office supplies.
Yeah, but, when you look at budget and prior year actuals, like, I don't understand some of them, like take travel meals, right? Like, yeah, we're keeping it 5,400, but I'm looking at the last two actuals, it's like not even half, so I'm just confused.
Yeah, actually, funny, I know, I decided we need to start going to conferences again. So honestly, after COVID, we stopped going to conferences, and we haven't really started back up again. And we plan to, and whether I do or not, it's important to stay in the budget for whatever comes along 5 years from now. I think it's important for, you know, to travel to those seminars and conferences.
I'm suspicious of that zero in office supplies in 03.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that doesn't.
Yeah.
There may be some holes like that that are quite accurate.
Like, what, all right, on travel meals, let's just say we're 6 or 7 months through this fiscal year. Do we know?
Oh, you say we're okay?
Yeah.
I think we've used much like our state conferences in March. We don't show conference.
You don't know how much you spent this year.
What it is right now, but I don't think it's much.
But there's so you have a March conference that is.
Right, for both of us in the office.
Yeah.
So that would be the combination of. some of the travel meals and some of the education training.
Yeah, the three I see is education, training, travel meals, and dues subscription. When I compare the budget to the last actual I have, they seem kind of out of whack because they're more than double. You know what I mean? 1,600 versus 750, or 2,400 versus 1,100, or 800 versus 860. Something dollars just doesn't make sense. The budget would be more than double for last year, actually.
There's some things that just prefer to cut from what we hold, that is such a small budget than it is.
Yeah, no, I know.
Does the scope of this, do you provide support for Little League or any of the club stuff as well, or is that a separate part?
Support, but not financial support.
Right.
Other than the actual fields.
Right.
Yeah. And even that CPW.
Is that working out, or is everyone getting a request to build that separation?
We'll talk about that when we get to capital. No, not everybody gets everything that's when it comes to big space.
But there's really nothing we can change in the budget that would make that work better.
And there are two of you as full-time employees?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
None of it's big dollars, I agree. I'm just saying, like, if we go one more year and the actuals on those things come in again, like way below budget, it's more just, it's not to try to restrict the budget, it's more to just make it look like what actually will happen, right? Like, that's all it's trying to do. It's not trying to constrict anything, it's just like, if you spend $1,000 a year, let's start budgeting too, just follow what it is, that's all. You know?
Yeah, and probably it's a matter of tightening up, as in some things that end up being paid out of our revolving fund that could be coming back to office as opposed to coming to the revolving fund.
There's stuff with revenues, and I was trying to locate here in the book. Greg, maybe you know this off the top of your head. Obviously, there's beach revenue, rental of fence stuff. So,
where's beach needs available?
You know, right, I see the income numbers.
So there's separate, so I've been looking at the beginning for under, what I thought was revenues by source.
Piece of local receipts, right? Receipts get broken.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at the budget spreadsheet, but I'm not even seeing it there. It's 55. Oh, recreation beach passes. So, estimated is 310,000. Is that for salary too?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, it looks like, yeah, it looks like this year was about 314,000 actuals.
Yes, correct.
Oh, we're looking year.
So I'm looking at a
So
spreadsheet.
23 actual, it's 314.
About year to date, fiscal 24.
We got that report 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
Right.
I'll have that on the screen.
Well, when it comes to beach fees, I always forget, is it more? Yeah, it'd be more this fiscal year, right, because July and August, right?
It straddles the fiscal year.
It straddles the fiscal year, but more of it would be like, more of last summer's beach fees would be in fiscal 24, because July and August, right, are part of.
So like for them, we're gonna do that.
You collect them at the front end of the fiscal year. Yeah. So that's why we get to know what year to date is, because that's gonna represent.
Federally,
Maybe talking about the spring.
passes,
The passes are, a lot of those times are sold.
the season passes.
Before July 1. So the actual, that number's gonna be.
Yes.
No, low.
So it's going the other way.
Yeah, go the other way.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's not about the walk-on fees, it's about the passes, the rest of
It's both, but just because the passes now are, that's 3.5 times of one walk-in, and then that same person's never paying again.
It really depends on the summer too.
Yeah,
Well,
I guess.
Rainy weekends and it has a big impact on everyone.
You do use a revolving fund, right?
No, not this.
Oh, okay.
This goes to the general.
Okay. So there's also a number in here for rentals. Which is $250,000, 250,000. 60, is that like Tux Point, other things like that, or is that number of amalgamation of a lot more stuff?
So it's a bit of amalgamation. The Tux Point even there. Cell tower, leases are in there.
Yeah, okay.
So it's a mishmash.
Mm-hmm. I think it would be helpful at some point to try to get just a picture of the revenues from Parks and Rec. That's easily done.
We have that. I'm not putting my finger on it right now. I'm sorry. I know that
Original budget.
that Andrew has those dollars.
The recreation line, like 100% of that recreation line, you can attribute to Parks and Rec or no. On page 55, the recreation, the 310,
Yeah.
You can attribute 100% of that.
Yes.
Yeah, right. But you're saying it's that plus.
We asked about rentals.
Yeah.
So that's what you were saying, includes other stuff.
Right. So some other values that Park Rec bring in, I mean, the rental line.
Yeah, no, understood. I'm just saying that 310 is like minimum base.
That's
and
minimum,
then
Correct.
you add, yeah.
And then there are dollars that come in through the revolving. Those are mostly in and out.
Yeah.
People who pay to go on a speech or something, an example, because there's no snow this year.
No, but at a very high level, to Maury's point, it's like you take the 310 and you look at the 173.
Well, plus the 232 for the same beach.
Right. Yeah, I think the 232 is in the 310.
Well, the 232 is the expenditures for the beach. And revenue.
Oh, you're saying you add an
I guess it's yeah, we're still.
Yes, most of that revenue is
On the beach.
is from the people side. That's the biggest revenue source.
So we're in all the costs.
But we can give you a breakdown of. We've done it in the past, and it slows us, we like the big expense side of it.
No.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah. All right, so
I'll make a motion to approve the Park and Rec budget of 173.04.
Mike makes a motion. Your second.
Yep.
All right, Dean,
Approve.
Mike. Approve. Maury,
Yes.
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes,
Andy says yes.
Yeah, just one small request, like I said, if we get one more year in the actuals.
Yeah.
That's just a clean up kind of. Well, whatever.
All that money then flows back to free cash. We end up giving Greg a hard time about it.
Right, exactly.
Right, it's always good. Hard times to mess it up. Free cash.
be like Singing Beach.
So Singing Beach is next, but, 69.
My own knowledge, the sanitation off season is changing substantially, is that what?
Porta potties, yes. They go
Again,
up
if you
and
look
up
at the
now.
actual for.
Yep.
23.
That's correct.
Well, yeah, part of just that, just like gone up, but also, the expectations of people to go up, how soon they want them there and how long they want them to stay.
And those are off season, yeah, those are just.
It's either all season 2 for when the bathhouse is not open.
I see.
We switch it, so twice a week cleaning for the bathhouse is not open and the bathhouse is open once a week. It's just much, but we're still there.
Where does the weapon come from for the ones that are asking them?
That comes out of the park and, well, it's, the DPW budget line.
Okay, so it's facilities, fine.
Motion to accept
Just one more quick one. I mean, I know we don't want to commingle revenue with the expense side, but just Greg, at a high level, like when do we set the sticker and the walk on and all those rates?
Well, so they've been set for this coming season.
So right, so when were they set for this coming season?
Yeah, actually just a couple of weeks ago.
A couple weeks ago?
Yeah.
And
Well, that was just the early bird one.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Well, they set they set it up. They did both.
Yeah, we try to look at them in fall, the department, to see if we're gonna recommend for them to go up together.
Sorry, who sets?
Ultimately, it's something.
Ultimate cycle.
Based on recommendation from the parking.
And I hope the answer to this question is yes, but when they're looking at setting those rates, do they look at like the cost increases and try to, maybe it's not a 1-for-1, but
right,
you try to.
Okay.
It's like these are going up significantly, so.
Right, we try to keep it that just.
Yeah, but at least cover the cost.
Right, cover the cost, and then sort of offsets.
So at a high level, what did they vote on? Do we like go up 5%, 10, 7?
So they, so the big increase last year. To the 35. For the regular season events. Early bird went up to 25. They kept the 35 at 35. So what? So they held last year's increase. The early bird one went up. Right, but not the.
What about the walk-on rate?
And $10 for daily walk.
So really, we didn't increase them. If you're saying 35 stayed the same, the walk-on stayed the same. The only thing we increased was the really big thing. I gotta believe doesn't represent a huge percentage of the total revenue.
Yeah, so again, they were feeling like last year was the big increase for the walk-on, as well as the seasonal tag. So they generally do sort of in every other year.
Why not increase the walk-on every year though? I mean, that's not hitting residents, right?
No, we could.
And I'm not doing it to gouge, I'm just trying to cover these cost increases.
That can still be changed.
Okay.
When the season starts.
Again, when does that get decided?
And the season starts in May.
It's on the website now, but it could be changed. I will say it's very hard when you're going down there telling people they're gonna pay $10 to walk on.
Yeah, I know, that's a whole separate issue. I mean, that's a whole separate, I get that issue, but that's the stuff. I mean, if you go down that road, I would argue if you run the math and numbers holistically, like, maybe it's about police details, right? To help enforce the collection kind of thing, right? If the math works, right? Like then you don't have some 17-year-old kid who feels intimidated and, right, he's got a police officer and, right, if the math works, like, that's how I would envision it.
Well,
true, because we've had to increase the police details, which is also now increase our costs, you know?
Right,
That's real.
right, so now let's try to recoup some of those costs, right?
Mike, I think the thing we need to do is go back and look at 2023 and see what we actually collected versus what we spent, instead of theorizing on the increases now, because we don't have that information.
Yeah, I'm all for looking at the data, but I'm just saying, I just heard that most of the rates are staying flat, and yet I see the cost going up, so.
The early bird went up from $10 to 25.
I heard 20 to 25.
No, it was $10 last year.
I think it was 20.
Am I, oh, okay. I swore I paid 10.
You got a deal, sir.
Maybe.
Got the volunteer.
Yeah.
Thinking in investigation there. But either way, I gotta believe at a high level, the early bird thing is not a big piece of the total revenue.
Yeah, but we're beating this to death and we need to get through the budgets. Select board's decision to make.
Maybe when we do get that other information, we're seeing, you know, a little bit more detail on the revenue side.
Yeah. We still brought in $80,000 more at the beach than we spent on the beach. Yeah, even though it's start charging.
I'm fine, I'm not looking to gum anything up, and I get, it's just weird that we gotta vote on expenses totally separate from revenue, when really we're business people, we try to bring it up them like this, right?
So another revenue question is the concession stand there. Is that's a 2 or 3 year?
It's a rental fee.
It's a rental fee. Is that
3 years?
3 years. And what are we getting for that? What's roughly?
It's
12, 15,000.
Yeah.
I think we've 12 to 15,000 range. It's in that ballpark.
And we didn't have many people apply, only one the last time around.
Yeah, the last couple of times.
That's very weather dependent on how well they do.
Well, the facility too is, I think it's like 60 amp service. There's not a lot you can do in the section there, is what I heard. Yeah, as far as that, you know, the bathhouse is kind of right down.
All right,
So can I get a motion?
Motion to approve $232,319 for the Sneak Beach and Lake budget.
Yeah.
Second.
All right, Peter motions, or second, or discussion.
I just wanna make sure we don't let fall through the cracks the revenue side.
No, I think it's an excellent point.
I just feel like we say things like, oh, we'll talk about it next time, and then yes, get missed, that's all.
Yeah. 13. Approved. Okay. I'm sorry.
Yes.
It's Maury says yes. Peter?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And Andy's yes. All right, next point at Crowell Chapel.
so page 172.
Can you give me ballpark on, this must be revenue positive. Not full, but definitely touches.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
The touches.
Exactly.
And is that still pretty popular? I mean, is it booked into the summer at this point?
It's not completely booked. It is still very popular. It's filling up. We did raise the non-resident rate significantly last year, which we got a lot fewer non-resident uses.
Really?
Yeah. More than double for non-resident. So, in the long run, it'll work out. In the short run.
So the split went from like, making this up, 50-50 resident, non-resident, and now it's like 2/3, 1/3 not.
No, it was probably always like 75% resident, 25 non-resident. Now it's probably 90-10.
Wow.
Yeah. A combination of, is it really fewer non-residents, or are those non-residents trying harder to find a resident who will take their information?
Right. Raise the resident rate or?
This year, I don't think so. Last year, I think we did by like 25.
And at the end of the day, they all get filled, right? But somebody's taking.
No, definitely not. Oh, no, we actually started running a get down there 3 weeks on the summer because nobody's using the shower house and it does seem like waste of free space.
Yeah. Yeah. What is, what's the rate resident versus non-resident for the shower house?
So for a weekend it's $325 for a resident and it might be $850 now for a non-resident on the weekends.
I would think regular front floor insurance for rental.
Yes.
And then renters are required to find insurance if they have alcohol there. Gators insurance, all that.
That's great.
Yeah, we don't, they have that.
What's high level toxic revenue?
I want to say 35, 40, is that right?
Yeah.
35, 40.
What's the story behind the plumbing? As far on the, is that tax or is it for the crowd? It's like a separate item that from building repairs.
That's why I asked about sanitation. I didn't know if the plumbing was somehow related to.
Is it the bathroom facility?
That is the bathrooms. Yes, it's just always, there's winterizing, unwinterizing. It's also, and it's all aging, so there's always something we need down there.
Yeah. For 800, 350 were the past actuals, so 2,500 now. But just, okay, so that is for the bathrooms. Maybe that would be a better description than plumbing.
It does sometimes also look with the,
And then I'm trying to reconcile the building repairs, plumbing, and then there's maintenance budget and facilities for 13K. So I guess that's why the building repairs went to 0.
Exactly.
Right. Presumably, so Greg, if we had some sort of an issue at the bathrooms at a touch point that wasn't within the budgeted amount, we would see it as a reserve fund transfer request.
Yes, or we now have this general building repairs.
Right.
That DPW was managing.
Okay.
So we would first go there.
Yeah.
Your door, if we needed it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, to Dean's point, there's enough of a delta on the recent actuals versus what's allocated for plumbing. It seems like it could be dropped, and it doesn't necessarily leave you without an option, would be about the building. That lots of questions.
Grounds, is that
So similar to the library.
Yeah.
DPW cut down there.
And
Right.
You gotta keep it nice.
Right, exactly.
I make a motion.
Yes.
The fiscal year 2025, touch point and prowl for 31,522.
I've made some motion. Peter seconds. More discussion. Dean? Mike?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And Andy's yes. like celebrations. Works here.
It is.
I don't think we've done those Memorial Day flowers for several years now, have we?
Honestly, I think it goes in my budget just because 4th of July is there, but I don't really have anything to do with it.
I think one person did it one year and it hasn't been done since then. It was a high school
They come
student.
back.
The freedom.
Yeah, the Freedom Flower folks. They've come and gone. It hasn't been consistent. I'm pretty sure we did it this a year ago.
We didn't in 23, there was no actual. And it wasn't in 24. I think we should take it out of the budget. We didn't spend anything in 22.
Wasn't it a new thing that just happened like a year or two ago?
It was new 4 years ago or so.
Oh, was it?
And then it dropped and then they did come back. I thought, oh, it's 0 here.
Yeah.
I thought they came back last year. We might have taken out of our, oh, I think that's what it was. So we didn't budget anything in 23. I think we took it out of the selectmen's donation account.
But we didn't spend anything either. There's no actual in there.
Because it didn't come out of this account.
Oh.
It came out of the select board's donations account instead.
Right, so technically speaking, what Sarah's saying, right.
Well,
I know what you're saying.
If we had budgeted, we would have used it from this account.
Right, but what you're saying is the cash went out the door, I get that, but it came from kind of over here.
Right.
It
didn't come from you.
Didn't help from here.
I just don't think we should, I don't think we should budget for a hit or miss type of thing.
I'm not falling on my sword for this one. So, there's no choice.
I'm with Sarah on this one. So Sarah, you're saying shave 1,000 out, right?
Yeah, delete the Memorial Day flowers line. I don't think we should be budgeting for something that people may or may not want to do. I don't think it's that important if they don't come every year. We say no.
All right, I make a motion to approve the public celebrations fiscal 2025 in the amount of 13,000, and striking 1,000 from the Memorial Day flowers.
You have a motion?
Selectmen can do it. Second.
Rory seconds. Anything else? Further discussion?
Steve?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Rory?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sarah?
Yes.
Yes. All right, capital?
That's it.
That's it?
Capital for.
Yeah.
It's all CPC.
Right, so,
Okay, Parks and Rec capital?
Oh, sweetie bat. What is that?
yeah, this one, so the walking paths at Masco I had put into CPC, a $20,000 request. I've since downgraded that to $10,000 to do a small engineering study, just to make sure that it's gonna mesh with the floodable park and the ADA requirements. Park and Rec Committee wanted in there because actually the ADA committee came and asked us to about a few different things. And this was one of them. Another thing was a map for the beach and help mobility at the beach. So we put that in CPC as well. It's not on here, but they approved that. So doing the walking paths. But after looking more into it, and then with the grant that was just received to look at Masconomo Park as a political park, and if we were to do all of the paths at Masco ADA probably will cost more than that, if we're gonna do it, we do wanna do it right. So we're gonna have a landscape architect or engineer take a look and give us a plan, so. That money has not been approved yet from CPA. That's on their agenda tomorrow night.
So you want to look at page 38 for the CPC project. Is that included? And this, obviously, this was as of December, so these.
Yeah, right. Number 7.
Yeah, number 7 on that list was the original request for 20,000 for the walkway. The chair just said, current thinking is to do an analysis for 10,000.
You know, part of that was you brought up about the park and the floodable part and all that. Currently, the path that's in the best shape is the one closest to the water, but you know, I was thinking having the barriers would help pull stuff in, but the borders can't be raised at all to also be accessible, so it's not pull anything in. So I mean, if we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it right. We'll have a study done instead. CPA did already the 28,500 for the resurfacing the basketball courts. And I think another thing, I've been you that brought it up to Dean about what they use as potentially a staging area if when Sweeney Park project goes through. If that does happen, the contractor would just be required to put it back to the way that they found it, just like when they use the tennis courts for the school. That happens. Almost. It's contingent upon something else. The Sweeney Park project for potentially next year, or do we just want to talk about this year?
I just had one question on the bathhouse. You know, it's iconic, historic, functional, revenue driving. Is it okay?
It is okay. And like the library, it's gonna need one of those studies and talking with DPW, they're kind of trying to deal with the bigger nuts right now, and they're kind of get to the other stuff. But the library has had some big issues. They kind of, and because they're going for that grant, they kind of got moved up, but some of the smaller buildings like the bathhouse and Chapel House, the bathrooms, tax and Crowd Chapel, those are kind of be on like the B list for the facilities plan that they're on. So kind of why Tampa gets a little spotty at the end too is I know there's gonna be things at the bathhouse. I just don't know exactly what that's gonna be yet.
Probably a scary topic, but if we have a storm event that damages the bathhouse significantly, can we kind of prepare it in kind or in place, or does that trigger something we have to do differently?
Oh, that's a good question. My understanding is if it wasn't totally destroyed,
renovation.
Yeah. If it was wiped out, they had to start over. That would be a different story. So I can check with.
So a topic for Nate and Chuck is probably make sure there's some element of it allow stand, like a chimney in the back or something.
That's still
not move.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway,
yeah,
it is amazing asset for the town. And I know every year we kind of like, oh yeah, we go roll over it, but
I hope my breath off.
yes. Okay.
Is that a septic or sewer? Septic.
We've had a study done of that within the last 10 years, just to make sure that is as long as we keep up with the maintenance, the yearly maintenance that we do, then okay.
Yeah.
In fact, it's only used to be about 4 months out of the year when the biggest problem is sanding things, but
we don't need to look at anything within the CPC, that's just informational, right? At this point.
That's next week.
Right. So.
Then there wasn't anything in the, the Sweeney Park Captain was the class piece.
Okay, that's.
All right, so nothing to do on capital.
I think that at a prior meeting, we had a conversation about the desire to have the Parks and Rec put all their projects into the town's capital budget and then make a determination each year regarding which ones would be funded by CPC instead of just going to CPC. Does that sound familiar, Maury?
It does, yeah.
No, you've had that conversation.
Yeah.
So whether it's feasible to create a 5-year plan for Parks and Rec, which includes everything, even the little stuff, and have it in the capital budget, and then anything that could be funded by the CPC would still be funded by the CPC, and it would be taken out of that year's capital budget on the town side, but at least it would have been in there for planning purposes.
If we were listed in the capital budget, just have a note on the side, CPC funded.
Right.
Because most of the Parks and Rec stuff is probably spanning over 2 years anyway, because you typically have engineering and permitting or something for bidding, and then you're doing something bigger.
Yes and no. I mean, certainly a recoding of a tennis court or
right
things like that. Those just
yeah. At the end of the day, there's no capital to vote on Parks and Rec.
So I pulled out the bathrooms at Sweeney thinking that it would be part of the bigger Sweeney project. But the request was to put, the original request that Cheryl had was have that 500,000 in for this coming year's capital.
Is that engineering and permitting, or is that engineering and construction, or what's your thought on?
I think that was engineering and construction.
Yes, all of it.
Yeah, that was the whole pass.
Cinder block, yeah. Built.
Would that be a leach field or
not a slate roof?
That's
right.
Slightly.
Yeah, the golf course back there. 10,000 porta potties for that.
Right. To go on those training things.
That's sort of been the perennial debate.
What's that?
That's been the perennial debate. We've looked at upfront capital.
Yeah, we've looked at this kind of thing a number of times.
Yes.
That's going to, yes, it's always a lot more money than you think.
And everything.
So it is, yeah. So nothing more then we're on set.
Have we considered for the restrooms at Fields going with composting toilets? I go to other parts of the country and that's what they use in parks.
You thought about it? But as far as it went, the leagues and the users weren't too excited about it.
They're not bad once you get used to them.
Yeah.
You go to Halibut Point and that's what they have inside.
Yes, say if you talk to the trustees of reservations about Misery Island. It's kind of a necessity out there, but they work pretty well.
Yeah.
But the traffic may be a fraction of what we're talking about.
They don't smell.
Yeah.
It's still the form of the year thing, right? Like there's no one at Sweeney right now, I'm sure.
Right. Throw lime in it, winter, and it resets itself.
There you go.
You don't spend a lot of time for something. Right. Thanks, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for sitting for the library.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
That's a very good photo.
There's nothing I'd rather be doing on Valentine's Day. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Well, the 1-3 minutes, I don't think they're baked yet. Okay. So I don't think we have any minutes.
Back and forth, and I mean, emails about minutes, I thought you might have some minutes needed.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think we're good.
I think with the minutes, with respect to the finance committee this time of year, I think it's very important that we get in our discussions and the reasons for our decisions rather than having it summarized to the extent it's being summarized. Because it's our only opportunity for people to kind of see our reasoning behind things.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point.
Really agree.
Yeah.
So it's more than what's required. In terms of the law says minutes need to have.
Well, the trouble that I had with the January 3rd minutes is that there were like some statements that had no context.
They're just sort of floating.
Yeah. So they were more of a head scratcher than helpful.
I mean, I think
I'll edit
but on the
those.
other hand,
Sorry, Gail?
I'm gonna edit the third. I did not do those meeting minutes, but I will edit them so they're better in better context.
Okay, thank you.
Now, I had a couple of comments on the third. Do you want me to just send them to you based on the old minutes, or should I just wait? And
No, send them based on the old minutes and I'll incorporate your edits too.
Okay.
Just forward them.
Yep.
Good. All right, and so next meeting is 2 weeks on the 28th.
Yes.
And that is CPC
Launch services.
We are,
Yep, we're all excited about that. Yep. Capital budget funding strategy and I guess the overall capital budget. Are leaving anything out, Sarah?
No, I just think that it's been pretty fluid and I don't know if what the various areas from which the money was going to be, the funding, the various funding sources, if that's changed since the original budget was printed and whether the capital budget needs to be updated to reflect changes before we vote on it.
Yeah, I'll take a review of that.
Okay.
We'll give you an updated sheet as necessary.
Yeah, and then we'll have to review the OPEB at that same meeting.
Right.
Because our votes kind of were not exactly what I was expecting.
Right.
We lost sight of that. Somehow we put an extra 300,000 in that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah. So we got that feasibility study for the school for Essex Elementary. That's the big change. And then the final share of the turf field.
Now that was listed in the education page.
Yes, it is.
Yep.
So I didn't realize that she already had that in. So
the turf field about 200. It's a turf field roughly.
300.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Total.
We've paid 800,000 for the turf field.
What's that, Sarah?
We've appropriated 800,000 for the turf fields, and we originally thought we needed an additional 400,000, but then the cost came in lower. So we have that third piece we haven't.
So our will be 1.1 instead of what we thought was going to be 1.2.
Right, right. Because we're half of. We're it's this thing of 12s, but yeah, we're a lot on Brook, and then we're 2/3 of Highland.
Right.
All right. So I just want to throw something out. And this is for you, Greg, and it's kind of a combination of the investment line within the local receipts, but it also ties to the discussion about the MMDT and what we got our cash in.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose sight of that. I want to make sure, because that's important to me for two reasons. Number one, I want to get a realistic estimate for investment.
Yeah.
Because right now it's,
it's a little bit.
It's ridiculously low, and especially if we've got these, you know what I mean? True it up to an honest number that helps cover some of these things we just talked about. But just in general, more fundamentally, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page about what the town's cash is invested in, because,
right,
you know.
So when do we want to cover the revenue? Do we want to do that with the capital piece when we're doing the funding strategy for capital?
There's some sense to that, right?
Yeah, go together.
Yeah.
So that would be the 28th.
I mean, that said, there's CPC launch services and then capital. So I guess we can fit that in, right?
Yeah, I mean, on 3-6, we're doing the schools. And then as I was reviewing everything, I found a clump of budgets that we skipped over. And then we have held budgets. So I was going to do the budgets we skipped over on the 6th, but we could do the revenue on the 6th after the schools if we wanted, and do the budgets we haven't approved at the same time as the held budgets. The only problem is if we do that, then we don't have an opportunity to go back with any questions. Because
yeah, so let's see how we do on the 28th. If we get the funding on the 28th, I think it's a nice marriage with the capital budgeting.
To include the revenue?
Yeah, if we can.
Okay.
We can, you know, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I also don't think you'll need the full meeting on the 6th for school. I think there'll be some time there as well.
Yeah.
Right, yes.
There's not much to do, like, get a number, like.
Right, I think we talked about it.
I don't think there's a whole lot more to say about the operating. Just have a little bit of discussion about the feasibility study.
Well, on the operating, I requested that Manchester reps on the school committee attend to explain to us why they picked option B rather than the lowest option.
Right. I don't think that's a 2.5 hour conversation.
Right, exactly. No.
Or another option for that matter. Last year, we were looking at the school saying that it's 7 or 8% or something in that neighborhood.
Right.
So now we're down at what, 2.9%?
2.9.
What's the delta in dollars?
What changed
between what the invoice is going to be coming our way versus what it could have been? That makes sense.
Oh, I've got, well.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't just start. It's really different options.
Yeah. In terms of the bill to us, yeah.
Yeah.
We're down to 1.84%.
I know, I'm dollar.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll get that one.
The dollars for the school you want? What are you asking? What are you asking, Mike?
What's that?
What are you asking?
What I'm saying is, and I'm making up numbers just to illustrate what I'm looking for, we're gonna get a bill for like 15.9, but it could have been 15.7. Like, you know,
so the increase for this year from last year is 296,193.
All right, but that's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is
compare that to option B and C, right? Or A and C.
Right, and so so we have all those numbers. We have the 3 options that the school committee considered. And I'll make sure that people get those in advance of the school meeting.
Yeah. They're on the school website, but I can send them.
Yeah.
It was 45,000. It was 45,000 difference between A and B.
That's what I want to know. That's the key. That's what I want to know. It's 45 grand, the difference between A and B. So yeah. So we're going to be paying 45 grand more than we could have.
Right.
Yeah. That's
yeah. And the total impact to the school is probably going to be something like 68 or 69.
Yeah, for the 2, they took 68,000 out of the savings on health insurance to fund 2 positions in the library. That had not been in the original budget.
So at the end of the day, how does option B, that number, fit within the number you initially plugged in here?
It's like 15,000 higher.
So. Almost about in the grand scheme of it. Yep.
And our health insurance number will probably stay in the $60,000 range for what is in the budget. I just got that this afternoon.
And the spreadsheet I sent out to people reflects some of the budgets that we have approved with savings in it.
Very helpful.
That was very helpful.
All right, are we good?
Revenue numbers.
Yeah, but I might be remote. I probably will be remote for the 28th, but
I thought you were remote tonight.
no, I'm sitting right here. But
I know, but this afternoon I said to Mike, can you come? I need a fourth.
Yeah, you guilted me into it. I could have been home.
Sorry.
Oh, no, I meant next week or 2 weeks from now. Seriously.
Okay, that was probably my mistake.
Take a motion.
Move that we adjourn.
Here, second. Or seconds. All in favor?
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you all.
Hey, sure.
Progress. See you next time, Sarah.
Those library people are going to think twice about them. Aren't they?
I have to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Tonight or tomorrow? Tomorrow. That's early.
I know.
All right, good night.
All right.
Yeah.
The thing that 50/50 is not the